quick introductions. You actually have all kind of done that already in the chat. We're going to discuss what autism is, just looking at medical diagnosis versus educational requirements, and then diving a little deeper into the 4 areas of impact, looking at that communication, breakdown, social interactions and engagement, patterns of behavior, and sensory. Those are really the 4 areas that children on the spectrum really have difficulties in, and we see in the classroom. And then a quick overview of just some tools to use in the classroom for students that are on the spectrum, and honestly work for all of our kids in a lot of ways. So always some good strategies for you. And then any questions at the end if we have time. I will throw in a quick break if we're good on time. So just looking at introductions, I think some of you have already done this, but just in case if you hadn't, please put your full name if you want to get credit for the CCR&R training, the county that you work in. It's nice to know the childcare program that you're with, and also your role with the program. And while you do that, I'll introduce myself. I'm Marianne in Stout. I'm an autism consultant with Northwest Regional ESD. I have been with the agency for 11 years. I started as a teacher in the classroom. I've worked on the evaluation team. I've been a trainer. I've been in the community. And for the last 5 years, I've been in the role of autism consultant. It's just, I really was drawn to those kiddos, and it's always exciting for me to be able to share my experiences and knowledge on autism to others. And I have my co-pilot, Anne Shopie, here, if she wants to introduce herself, but you may all know her already from other trainings. So she's helping me out with this tonight. All right, so what is autism? Oh, and actually, can we hit record? I think this is where.
I already did, Rhiannon. It's recording.
Perfect. That's fine. Okay, everybody, we're recording, just to let you know. So what is autism? Well, you know, there's really not a single definition for it, but as educators and also the medical field, we've all come up with kind of a defined definition of what really encompasses autism. There's no single cause for autism that we know of at this time. Really, there's a lot of theories, there's a lot of investigations into genetics and hereditary possibilities and medical problems. But at this point, whatever the cause is, it's clear that children, they're really born with it. Even if we don't see it right at birth, we do see it generally develop later in their lifetime, especially when social issues and educational demands become more difficult. But I do love this, that looking at autism as they're just always unique, totally interesting, and sometimes mysterious, because oftentimes I am always trying to figure out what's going on. So I like to put this in here. This is the Oregon Department of Education's definition of autism. So for educational purposes, this is what we refer to and use when we define autism for children in school programs. It's a developmental disability that includes deficits in social communication, interactions, also restricted, repetitive patterns of behavior, interests and activities. really what we're looking at is how do they react in social situations? How do they communicate needs and wants? How do these areas of these different traits affect their the social demands on their life, also the how they learn and how they develop. But I like to this is more my general kind of way of summing it up, that it is a neurological disorder, and it presents developmental delays. Children on the autism spectrum, they're going to be delayed in different areas of development. And they have a different way of processing, of organizing and integrating information. This different way of processing can cause discrepancies in their learning and their thinking. So it makes it really difficult for them in a classroom setting, because they're processing what's going on a lot differently than some of our neurotypical children. And it's referred to as a spectrum because there's such a wide range of the intensity from how different traits can really affect a student's daily life and their educational experience. And there's two ways a child can be identified with autism, and that's a medical diagnosis and an educational eligibility. Oh. This is a cute little cartoon that it might have been sent to you, and just to let you know, I will be sending you all the presentation tonight and some just great little resource tip sheets for classroom teachers in Spanish and English. And one of them is this cartoon. It goes a little bit more in depth, but it really just kind of breaks down what autism spectrum disorder is like for this kiddo. And he looks at it, and as we all try to look at it, as it's more of a wheel. It's not linear. There are so many different traits that our brain has, and it's the way that we process information. We process information through language, through our motor skills, sensory, what's going around ourselves. And those traits can cause difficulties. There can be, if one of those traits is limited, or if they're feeling it too much, it can cause difficulties in how they process the world around them. This little guide gives the information of that he's good at making conversation. He's really great at language, but sensory around him, all that information makes it really, really hard for him to communicate at times. So we may have a kiddo that generally can, talk to us about Earth and space, and then shuts down when he's in a group of other kids who are shouting and running around. So there's in that spectrum, there's different pieces that can be highly, they can be really strong at, but then other pieces can sometimes overshadow it and make it more of a deficit at times. This is a little overview of the difference between medical diagnosis and educational, just more for your reference. They're fairly aligned at this point in Oregon. Medical professionals use what's called the DSM-5, and there is a link to that in this presentation that I'll share with you. And they go through a checklist, and they're looking for those social communication deficits, deficits in social interactions, patterns of behavior, restrictive, repetitive, and hypo or hypersensory needs, which we're going to go into a little bit more detail about. The one thing with the medical is that that diagnosis is part of their medical record, and it's with them for life. They actually would have to, I think you have to request a re-evaluation diagnosis in order to have it changed. So typically, if a child's diagnosed at 3 years of age with autism, that is with them. Educationally, we are looking at the same criteria, but we're using a little bit more, we're going a little bit more in depth, at least I feel that we do, really looking at the child in different environments, how they are at home, how they are at school, how they are at the playground. And that eligibility, that educational eligibility for them, it just stays with them for 3 years, and then we re-examine it. So we're always wanting to make sure, because everybody changes and grows and develops a lot of really great skills, that those traits of autism may not be affecting them educationally as much anymore. So that's kind of that difference. We're not saying that they don't have autism anymore. We're just saying that educationally, they've developed a lot of skills to really navigate their environment. So what we're going to do now is really look at these areas that are the common characteristics of autism. Communication, social engagement, restricted, repetitive behavior, and sensory. We really see those areas as being areas that children are generally show characteristics that can be for them in their educational environment and also at home. So we start with communication. You know, communication is the first sign, typically. Generally, when you see those kiddos they're not jabbering, they're not imitating. Around 9 months, we usually see kiddos, babbling and being playful. We're not seeing single words around 16 to 20 months. A lot of those cries or, what we think are tantrums don't seem to relate to their needs. You might also start to hear them echo, or what we call echolalia, where they're repeating words or phrases. And they're doing that longer than they typically should. Little, young toddlers will repeat something that you said, but you see a child who's almost 3 years old that they're repeating words that they hear someone say. Also the nonverbal. We have a lot of kiddos that just don't have a lot of language towards preschool age. Or we might hear some unusual phrases or rhymes, languages, tone, kind of that sometimes sing-songy or patterns of sounds you might hear. For some kiddos, it's one-sided conversations. They want to tell you all about Jupiter, but when you tell them about your dog at home, they're they're not responding to that. They're going straight back to Jupiter and the solar system. The continued breakdown is we're also seeing words that don't have meaning. You might just have kids that are, might be some of those nonsense words, short attention spans. That attention really correlates with language and communication. If you can't attend, you can't really learn or know what's going on or follow a direction. There may also be problems with pronouns. We're not hearing kiddos say I or me or you or she or he. They may refer to themselves in the third person, saying Rhiannon likes to do this, or mislabeling people in their environment. A big one that I see often, this one always kind of sticks out to me, is communicating by hand leading or hand guiding. So a lot of that communication, they're showing us what they want, which is amazing, and it is communication, but it's hand guiding. I'm going to take you to what I need, or I'm going to use your hand to use the pencil or the crayon or the marker. And sometimes you see the behaviors as well. This is a time where they're communicating with their behaviors instead of words. Scripted language will often come out. You'll hear children recite words from, what's a movie right now? Addams Family or something. You'll start hearing that in their kind of everyday going ons. You ask them a question and they're reciting something from a movie or something that they just watched. You might see that also in play as well. And really that difficulty expressing their needs. We just don't know what, we're trying to know what they want, but that's where that behavior can come in, because we're not understanding and they're not able to express what they need. With communication we also see the breakdown of understanding language. It's a big one for kids on the spectrum. Really not understanding what we're communicating to them. Those verbal directions, like go get your coat, time to line up, go wash your hands. It's often lost on them. So many factors are kind of bombarding them that they just can't keep that direction there, or they may not be understanding the words yet or have that comprehension yet. So like needing visual cues or adult assistance is often a great strategy to help with that. When they get a little older, you'll see difficulties with double meaning. So it's that interesting piece of I'm feeling blue. And I actually had a student say to me, but you're not blue. And in their mind, blue means one thing. Blue means a color. Blue doesn't mean a feeling. So, really being aware that jokes or sarcasm or nicknames can often be lost on them and sometimes make it look like they're rude or defiant because they're not getting what you're saying. And that big one of asking for help. I mean, this is the one I feel like all the time with the kiddos I work with it's such a struggle. It's just not knowing how to effectively or appropriately kind of ask for that help. Not knowing how to maybe rephrase something or articulate how they're feeling. A lot of times they might just come across as being demanding or upset. You know, that kiddo that's like, I want this now. Where it might be that they just don't know how to say that they want your help in doing that. And that can be very frustrating. Oftentimes in settings at home. And next of autism, or one of the pieces that is a difficulty, is those social interactions and engagement. This is a really difficult piece for our students. They don't know how to interact. Those communication breakdowns directly affect their ability to engage with peers, or that asking for help, really gaining people's attention. So some of the social struggles that we see are understanding social cues. And I think this is something specifically when we see students get a little older, in preschool, like understanding that if my friend or the little kid next to me turns their back away, that means they probably don't want to talk to me. It's really difficult for them to pick up on those cues, that body language. I'm someone who talks with my hands a lot, and that it's difficult for them to kind of understand what my gestures are meaning, and also their ability to use gestures. One thing we see quite often is that, eye contact, facial expressions, body posture, even gesturing to get attention. It's difficult. For students on the spectrum, it's more difficult for them to learn by watching others. That's what a lot of us do in society, is that we watch what's going on. I think of, we say the DMV, we go to the DMV, which I haven't gone there in a long time, but we kind of see what everybody's doing. We're picking up what they're doing. Oh, someone took a number. Okay, now I'm going to get up and get a number. Oh, okay. They sat down here. Oh, their number's called. Now I go up there. Like really being able to follow the cues of what others are doing around us, to understand how to kind of follow that lead and appropriately follow those social norms. So you think about in preschool, that can be really difficult. If they're not picking up that everybody's lining up, or this is how we sit at circle, we have to work on, how can we teach them those things? Which I know is the big question. And another thing we see with kiddos with the social struggles is some of those kids that have a lot of language, they might be, interrupters, tattlers. They might say something embarrassing or offensive. A lot of it is they get a reaction, and a reaction is better than no reaction. They don't understand a good reaction opposed to a bad reaction. So it's, again, really having to teach them those social norms that we have in society. And then when we look at social interaction, we look at that communication piece and the social skills. This is where there's a real difficulty with having conversations, having a balanced back and forth. I think of preschool classes, and a lot of times I'll come in and I'll sit down next to a kiddo, and I mean, it's always some, sweet little girl with the baby doll that wants to show me her baby doll and wants me to play with her and wants me to know what I'm thinking and what my name is. That real, just that interactive back and forth. And that's really limited in our kiddos on the spectrum. That's really difficult for them to do. That understanding that I say something, they say something, I ask a question, they answer, that reciprocal kind of back and forth can be very difficult. And also, understanding other people's perspective. We call this theory of mind. It's being able to place yourself in somebody else's shoes, is the best way that I can kind of explain it. That can be very difficult for students and people on the spectrum. It's not a lack of empathy. It's just being able to remove themselves and be able to look from the eyes of somebody else. And if you think about that, that's a pretty deep thing to do. That's really, I think we all kind of work on that, being able to reflect and think about our actions. But it's much more difficult. That ability definitely can be lacking for students on the spectrum. So when we look at the social interactions and communication, those deficits, those challenges, this is where we see those challenges in the classroom. This is, these are the things you might be seeing with some of the kiddos right now, is that, difficulty developing relationships with others. They're not really wanting to share their enjoyment or interest. There's a lack of really that social or emotional, as we call that joint attention, that, look at my toy, isn't it so cool? And showing them and being able to have that real interaction back and forth with something. Lack of imaginary play. That's one I see very often in preschools, is they're just not there yet. It's hard for them to kind of really dive into another, I guess, kind of realm, let themselves go and become something else. Everything can be very, this is how I do it, and this is how somebody else is going to do it, and it must be done that way. So that somewhat black and white. Also, the pretend games. We don't often see a lot of initiation of peer games. Difficulties even being with a lot of different peers. Probably prefer to be alone a lot, or they have maybe one peer that they're kind of drawn to. And that repetitive play with toys, and not using toys for their intended purpose is. So these are some things that with all of you, working in those preschools, and, we're all working on, inclusion, and these are the things that I'm imagining you're seeing as challenges right now, that these are things that are kind of coming up for some of those students that are on the spectrum. And maybe some other students too, since this has been, we've been in a pandemic for a year and a half. So a lot of our kiddos have lacked social interactions and just haven't had those opportunities. So these are areas that can be really difficult right now for all of us. Let's see. So next piece is patterns of behavior. This is where we're really looking at those kind of different things that they're restricted, or they're intense interests that children might have. As we can see, the little guy here lining up all the cars, and even a lot of them in color order as well. That's his intense interest. That's what he wants to do. He wants to repetitively do that. And that makes it really hard for him to socialize in a preschool setting, or with, with other children. Oh, have animation here. So some different, or some specific things you might see, that repetitive or unusual use of toys, lining up things, flicking objects, needing to have routines or rituals. I always need the lights off, or I always have to be first in line, or I always sit at this place at the snack table. Spinning self or spinning objects. That's kind of a typical one that we'll see. Lining things up. Actually gonna just go through these really quick so we can just see them. One that you'll see often in preschools is that difficulty generalizing skills. So at home, they may be able to use the bathroom and do that routine, or they'll go and sit for snack or dinner, but they haven't learned how to do it in a different setting. Part of that has to do with that comfort. Part of it has to do with that is how it is. I learned it this way, and this is how I do it here. And it's hard for me to do it somewhere else. So it's that, how do we break that? How can we, get them to generalize those skills in another setting? Really seeking repetitive stimulation. So jumping, as we said, spinning, crashing into things. A lot of like taking in, taking out, taking in, taking out, dumping and pouring. And, really that the change in environments, it can be a big trigger for a lot of kiddos. That change in routine, that change in a teacher, that change in their toy not there that they usually play with. Change is really difficult, and especially when it is unexpected and they're not prepared for it. I am not going to read through all of these because it's very long and extensive, but these are just examples of those patterns of behaviors that we often see. These are the behaviors that really get our kiddos stuck. When I work with students in the community, a lot of times this is what is stopping them from being able to socialize with someone, being able to be part of the group, being able to adapt and follow those directions, because they might be just so rigid in how they do things or how they want things done, that it can really impact. It's kind of just like that domino effect of, if I can't do this, or if this is blocking me, then there's no way for me to continue forward to other things. So it's just kind of just a reference sheet. If you kind of see some of these things, then it might be something to think about, talking to a family about, possibly. And the last part of, well, not the last part of the presentation, but last part of the areas or that really affect our students on the spectrum is that unusual response to sensory. So sensory is, our sensory system, everybody's sensory system reacts differently. There's so much stimuli around us at all times. And for kiddos on the spectrum, it's really range in the intensity. Let's see, let's show some things. So when we think about sensory, we think about our sensory system. So our sensory system is sight, it's hearing, it's touch, it's taste. All of that communicates so many things about our outside world to us. These are more of the kind of medical terms, or more defined words that are used in the community, but vestibular, it's that inner ear, just we might have, a child might be, off on that. That's why you might see the hands over the ears, because whatever that noise is, it's making them feel off. It's making them feel agitated. It might affect their balance. It might affect just even kind of the nerves in their body. Proprioceptive, did say it right. That's our body in space and our memory. So it's really interesting. We have our muscles remember how to do things. We always talk about, once you learn how to ride a bike, you can always ride a bike. It's your body has learned, your large muscles have learned that, when they touch a pedal and they go in this motion, they continue to do that. Some kids, this can kind of be twofold. Some kiddos, their bodies, they have amazing gross motor movement. They're climbing all over everything. They know exactly where to put their hands and their feet, and they're jumping off things and doing these activities that just make every mom shrill. But these are also the kids that they're stumbling over people. They're kind of like the bull in a china shop. They're pushing their way through things. They're not understanding their body and space. It's not understanding that their body, these movements can create this reaction. So it's kind of that cause and effect. And we can also see with the sensory system that deficit might have. Often I see kiddos with a lot of difficulties with small, fine motor tasks. Writing can be really difficult. They don't want to hold the pen. We have to really help them with different ways of, manipulating something, building towers. That there's just kind of a breakdown in their sensory system where that is difficult for them to do. A big thing, though, that I always try to remind people is that this a lot of times comes out and really, it can be negative looking behavior. I don't want to hear this. I'm going to scream because little Katie over there screaming and crying, but it's hurting my ears so bad that now I'm going to retreat and I'm going to fall to the ground. Sometimes their reaction to this overload of sensory in their life comes out and, just can be bad looking behavior. And it's reminding ourselves that it's not about them, being naughty or not wanting to do what we ask. It may be that their body they can't take it in right now. There's something just too much that they need to have a break to kind of recalibrate, kind of bring themselves back into the moment. Get myself up to date here. So when we do look at sensory, there's two different things, or kind of two different ways we see kids. I mean, granted, they might be a mixture of both of these. But all of us kind of have different responses to sensory. We might be hyper responsive, meaning we avoid. I don't want to touch anything. That noise is too loud. I don't want you to touch me. I don't like being close. I don't like the smell of this. Don't like my hair combed, haircut, teeth brushed. Or you may have the kiddos that are the sensory seekers. Their body is seeking information. Their body wants so badly to just like feel that they're crashing into things. They want big hugs. They don't care how loud it is. the louder it is, the better. They're climbing all over you. They're jumping on a trampoline for, hours on end. Those kiddos, just their body needs it because it's so under responsive. Then you will also see kids that are kind of both. So sometimes you have kind of a mixture. So being aware of those, and I think really just being cognizant of, this kiddo, this is hard for them, or they don't like this touch. So maybe I'm not going to guide them with, a hand to the, like a little touch on the back or holding their hand, thinking of different ways to help them through their day, and really being kind of sensitive about that sensory piece. Another piece of just kind of talking about sensory and regulation. So when we look at that hyper and hypo responsive, normal registration in a person is a combination of ups and downs. We're going to feel, up, and we're going to be like, yeah, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to, for me, clean the house and, do all these things. And then there's going to be times I'm just going to kind of crash, and I'm going to need downtime. And that downtime is going to help me get back up. So it's kind of that normal registry should kind of be like that. A lot of our kids on the spectrum fall on either a low or high, meaning they're understimulated, as I kind of talked about it. They're the ones that are seeking things. So they just so badly need, their body is just seeking some type of stimulation, some type of just, they need to, I guess, just kind of like feel like they're just, so they're jumping and they're climbing, and I always think these are probably the kiddos that are gonna like be skydivers and bungee jumpers and all those extreme sports. Those are the kids that are just like, I need something. I need to like really feel that like crazy, just kind of intense input. And then we have the ones where they're kind of like always at that high point, and they're overstimulated. Like they need things, it's too much, and they're feeling too much, and they need to have those breaks, and they need to, maybe it's an environmental change. It's, different strategies within the classroom or at home to just kind of bring them down, because their bodies are so dysregulated and feeling so just kind of overwhelmed. So they're always kind of up here, and, it's kind of our job to try and bring them, both of them, just kind of evenly keeled. Okay, so we went through those. And now I am going to share, and I hope I did this right the first time. This is a perspective of what it's like to have autism. This young woman, gosh, I don't know how old she might be now, but is Carly, and just some back information on her. She's nonverbal. She uses an iPad to communicate. And through that, she was able to express what it was like to be, or what it's like to be her and to see the world from her eyes. So this is kind of a small video clip, kind of dramatization of what it feels like for her as she's communicated through this this book. So let's see if I can. Oh, goodness. Let's see. Anne, can you tell me if you hear that?
I cannot.
So
I think you'll have to stop sharing and then click both the video and the audio boxes.
That's what I thought.
I know I always forget to.
I knew that was going to be the case. All right, hold on. All right, here we go.
Where everyone can chef.
Can you hear it
remember
now?
forever?
Yes.
Okay.
I can't wait for a coffee. Oh, hello, barista.
What do you girls want?
Skim soy latte? Taryn, soy can't be skim.
Hot chocolate, orange juice.
No, Dad, I want a coffee. Hot chocolate? Great.
So I was thinking of going to Sarah's later. Could you give me a ride?
Yeah, sure. Are you cool with taking your sister?
Yeah.
Wait, what? I have my own plan.
Carly.
Okay, I'll see you tonight, okay?
Carly. How can I help?
Oh my gosh, my mom. All right. Oh, give me 1 second. Why? Got 45 more minutes. Does anybody want like a 5-minute break? Because I don't think the rest will take too much longer. 10, Angie? No.
My daughters want me to get her ready for bed.
Okay.
It's
I think 10
time for her.
I'm pretty sure 30 minutes will be just fine to finish up the rest. So yes, 10 minutes. So 7:26.
Well, if you come back on, I'll still hear you, but be helping her too at the same time.
Okay, that sounds great.
So, okay.
All right. done. Share. Just submit that person. All right. Okay, so we are back. So we went through all of that, and that is what kind of defines autism as the medical community and the educational community kind of says, and that's the label that we give kiddos. But you know, Temple Grandin, she's a very renowned autistic adult that has done a lot of research and talks and written books just about her own experience as being an autistic individual. And I love this. I try to think about this as much as I can, because I also think about this in general, that, you know, labels by themselves give no meaning. See the person, not the label. And just really try to do that with all the kiddos that I encounter and just in my general life. So if we can just kind of look at more of what they need, opposed to, oh, they're autistic, this means that. So it's really seeing the child for who they are and what they need individually. So we're going to jump into kind of the learning styles of kiddos on the spectrum. They definitely have a unique learning style, and it's due to the way their minds really process information. You know, we talked about the sensory system. I mean, they're processing everything that's coming at them. Through that video, I think is a nice example. And I know there's if you ever want to just go down a rabbit hole, like try to find videos about what it's like to be autistic. It's pretty fascinating. Just how much their body takes in during the day, so much we miss. Like, you really kind of miss a lot of things. You know, sometimes, you know, I think we've just learned to filter out distractions, but their minds are going to process things differently. It's going to be touch, sight, smell, taste, hearing. So we just really need to take that into account, kind of think about things that could help them in their learning in those different ways of processing. You know, strengths for students with autism have some amazing strengths. I think, unfortunately, we always talk about the deficits, the challenges, you know, what's wrong. But they have amazing visual skills, that they're visual learners. They can pick up just amazing little details to things, memories of things, just can remember. There was a child I saw online almost a year ago when the pandemic started, and she saw me via computer again, and she looked at me and asked, she said, "Bubbles." And when I saw her, that was the first thing I showed her, was bubbles. Like, she just, that association and that memory and that connection. I mean, it's just amazing, because memory can be such a difficult thing for a lot of us. Ability to follow routines. I love routines. I mean, it's comforting. And that, you know, sometimes we get hung up on this persistence in an area of interest. some kiddos are just really into the solar system or dinosaurs, but man, sometimes it's fascinating the amount of information that they take in, and it's a love and it's a passion. I was in a group meeting with some of my colleagues, and she was talking about how someone once told her, think about what are the things that bring you joy in your life. And then someone told you, you can't think about that anymore. Like, you can't, like, these, those intense interests bring them joy. It brings them comfort. It brings them calmness. It brings them love. A lot of us have just learned that we're not supposed to, societal norms, or we don't talk about that all the time. We're not going to inundate somebody with what we love. I'm not going to talk about my two daughters over and over again to somebody, because, I've learned that just bugs them. But, being able to kind of like look at that in that different perspective of like, that is what they love, and that's what brings them joy and comfort. I just find to be just kind of like a really beautiful thing, and something that you can build upon too, is really diving into those interests and finding how can you, build learning opportunities onto those. So some learning characteristics of students on the spectrum. It's hard for them to take that perspective. We've kind of gone through this a little bit, but they are going to typically learn best with a structure. So needing their day set up, knowing that flexibility is hard for them. So kind of preparing for that in your classroom, that there's going to be a change. So we're going to have to kind of think of how, George is going to react to that change. Knowing that those typical social rewards may not interest them. Really trying to find the things that motivate them. It takes a little bit more work. It's hard to find what motivates some of these kiddos, and but once you do, you can really just, you have an opening to just an area of learning and kind of opportunity when you can find those things that motivate them. And knowing that there's difficulty for them organizing information. It can often be a little bit disorganized. Knowing that if I do this, this happens, and the whole sequence of events is a difficult thing for them to understand. That's what we generally refer to as executive functioning, is knowing that a beginning thought or beginning idea leads to an end, and that there's steps in between that you have to complete. So it's, it's that organizing your day, the general like kind of understanding of how things get from one point to the other. We've talked about the processing delays of language. And, they may show some great strengths in that visual learning, but also the weakness in the auditory. I think my one thing to take away from tonight is if you have a student that you're having difficulties, like kind of following directions or some of those behaviors, if you can go to that picture, if you can use that visual to show them your expectation or what's happening next, that would be awesome, because it's so easy for, I think, just a neurotypical child to get lost in directions. But if you show them what to do, it sticks there. It's there the whole time. Where someone once described it as writing something down. When you say something, it's like writing something down and then erasing it and telling someone to look back at it. It's too hard. It's gone. But that visual is always there for them to refer to. And just being, really aware that their skills are going to vary day to day. One day, things might just really click and things are going well, but the next day there might be some of those sensory issues. Just like any of our preschoolers, we didn't get enough sleep. And so now I'm agitated and vulnerable and maybe a little bit more anxious. I'm not going to go through this too much because I don't want to, I know that we're limited on time. But this is something that I thought was, I think for me as a teacher, helped me to kind of, put myself back in the shoes of the child. So, this is a little chart of the student's doing this. He keeps asking the same question. Oh my gosh, that can be so aggravating. And as a teacher and as a parent, initially we're just going to be like, oh my gosh, they're using this to get attention. It's an attention getting behavior. But it could also be he's having difficulty understanding what's going on. He may be really confused. He may be repeating that same thing over and over again because he can't understand what's being asked of him. He might need that visual to remind him. So these are just a few examples of just kind of nice reminders of like, they're doing this. Maybe it means actually this. And I should think about that. So now you have a student in your class, your daycare setting, Head Starts, preschool promises, all our different settings. What do you do now? So this is going to be a quick run through of some ideas of how to help you, or kind of like strategies to use in the classroom. And like I said, I'll be sending out some more training dates that will dive a little deeper into each area. But this is kind of an overview because I don't want to take all your night up. So these are some commonly used strategies and interventions. If you can, this is something just to even have out somewhere, with communication. I think about this with all younger kids, is just keeping your language simple. Really direct and limited. Limit your words to as much as they can communicate. That makes sense. So one of the classes I teach is about communication, and we say you always communicate to them one more word than they're giving you. So if they say, I want cookie, oh, I want more cookie, or I want more cookie, mom, just adding on to that. So long phrases, long sentences are going to get lost with most of our kids. Keeping gestures simple. We talked about the sarcasm and humor. Giving time, it's just such a big one. The wait time. Can you give the direction and wait before you tell it again? Because, sometimes those kids just need that time to process it all through. They have to, take it from here to here and then to the action. So it can be very difficult sometimes for them. Visual cues and, setting up situations that encourage that communication. All right, so we're gonna go through just some examples of visuals. This is my first line kind of teaching, and strategy is if they don't get it by me saying it, then let's try showing them it. So we have discovered, it's been shown through studies, that children on the spectrum learn through visuals. They're visual learners. For them, they can predict what's happening. It's right there. The expectations are clear. It's concrete, and it is a great way to teach independence. So if you're eventually want to get them going through their day on their own, having them have that visual will help a lot. I just think about like my calendar, like every morning, or actually every night, I look at my calendar to know what I'm going to do. So kind of that visual of what my expectations are for the next day. You have to realize that they have to be meaningful. Is really kind of, working with if you have someone, if you're working with us, with Northwest Regional, with a provider, is really trying to figure out where the child is. Do they need visuals that are more like real objects? Or can we do, photographs, or, kind of getting to those, you guys have all seen it, the little board maker pictures, or are they on to the point of like written words? So it's just really understanding where they're at with visuals. And when we talk about visuals, we talk about the big one is schedules. Scheduling out their day so they understand what's happening. Organizing and sequencing the activity. Having them know when the activity is done and what is happening next. And sometimes it's adding in there like what they get to earn after doing part of that activity. So just a few visuals I'll show you quickly are calendar and daily schedules, mini schedules, choice boards, and routines. It's with visuals, we do have to remember that we have to teach it. I think often we think like, oh, we're just gonna, I know I did this with my kids. I'm gonna put up this visual and here's what you're supposed to do today and go do it. And it takes time. It takes teaching. It takes some adult support to help them understand that this is the expectation. This is the process. You know, we're going to teach them kind of those, a lot of it starts with like kind of that basic reading function too. Like, you know, there's a stop, there's a finish, or a start, there's a finish, there's a left to a right, there's a top to a bottom. We work first and then we play. And when we're finished, it means finished. So just modeling that for the student and staying consistent with that. Some examples of some daily schedules. These would be ones you would have, and I bet a lot of you have, like around circle, that just show, here's what we're doing for the day. It's really helpful to, you know, indicate that something's done. So you might have your schedule up, but like, you know, you've come to hello circle and you're going to talk about all of these being done. So just having them some go away so that they know that there's an order that's still happening. And these are just, again, like they're easily accessible. All the kids in the class can see them. And then we have our individual schedules. These are ones that we would use with kiddos that need a little bit more support. We might work with them to, you know, check their schedule. You know, Daniel, you might prompt him or cue him to check his schedule, and he's like, oh, okay, it says bathroom. All right, I'm gonna, you know, take this picture and match it to the bathroom door, and I know it's bathroom time. And then he's gonna check his schedule and know that he can play with toys next. So these are some, you know, just more individualized, because a lot of our kids need to start a little bit more specific. I'm not going to show these clips because of time. Mini schedules. These, I love mini schedules because I think a lot of our kids that have kind of that processing, you know, not understanding steps of directions. These are really helpful for an art project. You know, this might actually be, you know, cut, color, glue, or color, glue, and cut. And they see the steps, and you're not having to keep reminding them verbally. You don't have to keep saying over and over again, no, it's time to cut, it's time to color. You can point at the picture. You can show them what needs to happen. And that's where we come to the first and then. This is where, with visuals, we generally start with. It's giving a child, this is what we do now, and this is what we do next. It's very helpful in behavior. If a child's struggling with something, they don't want to, you know, write their name. You have first a picture of write your name, and then next is maybe a preferred item, Play-Doh, car. And so we're enticing them. We're kind of, you know, we're luring them in a little bit. Expectation in the classroom. These are just some different examples of first and then. You know, especially bathroom, not a lot of times a favorite thing to do, but after bathroom, they get to go outside. So preferred activity. Visuals we can also use for behavior expectations. Circle rules. I'm sure a lot of you have this, just that, eyes are listening, ears or eyes are listening, eyes are watching, ears are listening, body calm, just those reminders that you don't have to say anything. You can just point, touch to it as a reminder for any kiddo. And then, and I am sorry if anybody's put anything in chat or anything like that. I can't actually see that. I was just thinking that right now. So
no questions in chat.
Okay. And then this is an example of a choice board. This is giving that visual of what they can do at this moment. So it may be that they need to calm down or they don't know what to do. We have that often where the kid kind of wanders. I don't know what to do. And you can show them, hey, here's your choices right now. This is what you can choose. And they make that choice. These are different resources for pictures. You can make them with anything. You don't have to have any, fancy clip art or, board maker that we often use. But if you are working with one of us at Northwest Regional, we can always help you with some of those visuals. I really love this kind of words to live by. Use visuals to provide structure, motivation, and in the end, you'll get independence, because that is our ultimate goal, is that independence for them. Oh goodness. Okay. We are definitely running out of time. I'm going to go through this really quick. So environmental arrangement is something that's also really key. Setting up your environment so that students know what to do, where to go, how to kind of structure their day. This table means this, or I have pictures that tell me that this is the home living area and I'm going to match that picture and I'm going to go there. Just really having direct routes. That's a big one. So being careful not to have too many things are just overwhelming for especially kids on the spectrum, and also a lot just younger kiddos. Some ideas for areas that you can have in your classroom. When you do have defined areas in your classroom, like this is what you do here, this is what happens here, this is what we're doing now, it does really help kind of define boundaries and help with behavior, because there's kind of that clear expectation, and you don't have to worry about that wandering or kind of getting lost in what's going on. And when in doubt, timers are one of the best things to use, because I always blame it on the timer. Give them that warning, 2 more minutes, set the timer went off, we're all done. And then move to the next thing. Gosh, I'm sorry, you guys, I'm just like running through this, but just remember, use less words. Pictures are worth 1,000 words. Look at your environment. see what's happening. That might changing things in your room might help a lot with behaviors and issues. And this one, always tell the student what you want, not what you don't want. So if he's on the table, feet on the floor, not get off the table. We really just want to emphasize what we want you to do and the behavior that we're wanting, not stop doing that. And I have resources here, a lot of great resources with visuals. And thank you. Here's my email. And I kept it under 2 hours, so I am all done. Is there any questions? Very welcome.
Thank you. It was very informative. It was a good, what would you call it? A reminder of things. I've dealt with autistic kids quite a bit, but not for a year. So it was good, a good reminder for me. Thank you.
Oh, get it. I need the reminders all the time.
We all do.
Yes.
It's 2021.
I know.
All right, are we all done?
Yeah.
If anybody has any questions, you're welcome to stay on for a few minutes. Otherwise, you are welcome to go. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you.
Thank you.
How do you go to somebody who's raised their hand?
You just call on her and then she can unmute herself.
Oh, I don't know who it is.
Bethia, can you unmute yourself?
I'm sorry. I totally forgot I was on mute.
It's okay. Happens to all of us.
Thank you so much for all of this information. I've been learning a lot tonight. But I did have one question, and I was wondering if you could tell me, I understand that autism is a spectrum, but are there any like specific tips you can give me for someone who's been diagnosed with Asperger's? I believe that Asperger's is like part of the spectrum, but how is that unique? Is there any kind of specific thing that I can do to that, or does all of this sort of work with it?
It should. I mean, so technically, Asperger's is not, at least in the DSM-5, the new kind of diagnosis criteria, they've just said autism. But a lot of individuals that have been previously diagnosed as that identify with that. Like that's their identification, and totally understand. I think more what you see with individuals that identify and have those areas of kind of like difficulties is going to be more that social communication, that social interaction. That's the piece where it's more difficult. So I think depending on the age, it kind of it would definitely vary. But things that, you know, for older students I've used is some like video modeling. Like, here's the expectation. This is how we go. This is how we do this.
Okay.
So it might be, you know, perspective taking of a video of, you know, this is how I greet the front desk.
Yeah.
At school, and, you know, like, and go through my day.
With my experience, or what I'm trying to, you know, figure out, I've got like two issues, two different people. one of which I've been told not officially diagnosed, but her doctor said, you know, I'm not an absolute, you know, you should get her assessed. But in the meantime, as I struggle to try to do that or try to counsel for that, I'm trying to see what I can do daily. But this is someone who's 14 years old. So we've got somebody older. And so I'm just like, what can I do to support? Most of the